Hey everyone, Heero here, and today we're gonna look at Nangong Yu, an anomaly-centric stunner that's capable of doing sub-DPS levels of damage through blooms and polarity disorders. I'll be discussing her kit, builds, wenjins, and possible themes. Just as a quick disclaimer though, the footage and information that will be shown is from the creator experience server, so things can still change when her banner drops. Now let's first start by looking at her unique resource, Downbeats, which has a max of 100 points. With you gaining 3.8 points passively per second, 12 every time an anomaly is triggered with a cooldown of 6 seconds, and finally 30 points at the start of combat. Now downbeats are required to execute her full 3-part charge attack combo, which is her main way of dealing daze. With the first hit being free to use, but the second and third need to consume 50 downbeats each to activate. So you need 100 points or a full downbeat bar to use the whole attack. Now you can activate each hit by holding the basic attack button 3 times, but the neat thing is, if you let go of basic at the perfect time, it will trigger precise charging and each attack will deal 20% more daze. With the perfect timing being indicated by Nangong Yu glowing blue, but if she loses the glow or she automatically launches the attack, they lose the bonus daze. Now you can combo directly into the second and third hit of her charge attack after a chain attack, ult, or EX special if you have enough downbeats. With the neat thing being, said abilities also don't affect the combo count of her charge attack, meaning you can use any of them in between each hit to string together combos. As for other things to note, the dash at the first hit can block enemy attacks, and doing so will trigger precise charging. And of course, it also provides invincibility frames, damage reduction, and interruption throughout the entire attack. As for her EX special, it's just her standard attack that deals high amounts of daze and anomaly buildup. But aside from that, it does nothing too special. In a similar vein, her ult also does the same, but is essentially just a stronger version of her EX special. That also happens to activate her Ether Veil Delusion Reprise, which is just the same as Arya's and Suna's. But what makes her truly unique and is the source of her damage and buffs is her core passive, which explains why it's so damn long. Now starting with her core skill, first it grants her a permanent 120 AP buff, and for every 10 points of initial anomaly mastery she has, her impact increases by 1. This makes it so that most anomaly mastery sources like a slot 6 main stat or Phaeton's Melody are more valuable to her than impact buffs since they give her more impact. Aside from this, it also grants a 35% anomaly buildup and 20% daze buff to herself, and a 25% party-wide damage buff after using her EX special or charge attacks, with the buffs having a 30-second refreshable duration. Moving on, her passive also allows your party to stack a unique debuff on a stunned enemy called Vibrato, with every trigger of a disorder, a bloom, and anomaly application all inflicting 1 stack of Vibrato. Now, Vibrato has a max of 4 stacks, and when it reaches max stacks or the enemy recovers from a stun, all stacks are consumed to trigger Xiao Yu's special Bloom. Just like other blooms, it has a different multiplier per element, and it deals damage based on the original damage of the anomaly currently on the enemy. In her case, her blooms scale off the number of Vibrato stacks consumed upon activation, with each stack consumed increasing the bloom's damage multiplier by 25% with a max buff of 100%. But just note, Vibrato can only be built and consumed once per stun. Now for her additional ability, it needs an anomaly or AOD character to activate. Starting with its support utility, any party member attacking stunned enemies gets a 30% anomaly buildup buff, while their chain attacks gain an additional 30% for a total of a 60% buff. This really puts the emphasis of her teams playing around stuns, since it makes it easier to build anomalies and trigger disorders on top of her Vibrato mechanic, all of which resulting in huge damage, especially when you consider her Misstep buff. Misstep is applied to enemies by the 3rd hit of her charge attack or her ult, and it basically just increases their stun damage multiplier by 30% and stun duration by 3 seconds during the next stun. But now we can look at Dance Prowess, which is indicated by the 2 dots on her bar, with her gaining 2 stacks every time an enemy is stunned, with it lasting for 15 seconds. Dance Prowess gets consumed after using her EX special, charge attack, or quick assist against an enemy that is both stunned and afflicted with an anomaly to trigger her special polarity disorder. Now this deals 25% of the original disorder damage, and it's pretty similar to Yanagi's, wherein it's essentially a free disorder proc that doesn't override the current anomaly. Just note, triggering it will also activate a quick assist to the previous unit, but if it fails to trigger, Dance Prowess will not be consumed. As for other things to note, first, Nangong Yu also gets one free EX special use after stunning an enemy. Second, while she has Dance Prowess, she will automatically trigger the first hit of her charge attack with a guaranteed precise charge upon switching in. And finally, if Arya is in the team, Nangong Yu will trigger her polarity disorder whenever Arya uses her ground pound during their joint animation. As long as the enemy is stunned and has an anomaly status, of course. Now for ability prio, level up her core first, then her basic, then her skill and ult, then her assist, and finally her dodge. Just note, despite being kinda like an anomaly sub DPS, you have to level up her basic, ult, and skill since their days multipliers are tied to their skill level. But with her kit out of the way, let's talk about her Mindscapes. Her M1 gives her a full bar of downbeat at the start of combat, while enabling her EX special and charge attacks to now inflict a 40-second 18% death shred with a refreshable duration. Her M2 increases the bonus damage a balloon gets from each vibrato stack by an additional 10%, going from a 25% buff per stack to a 35% one. At max vibrato stacks, this results in a 140% buff to her bloom multipliers compared to the 100% from pre-M2. Aside from this, the bonus stun damage multiplier from her additional ability's misstep debuff also increases by 30% for a total of 60%, which of course is insane for damage. And finally, it triggers a polarity disorder with the same multipliers as her additional ability whenever the active character's chain attack hits a stunned enemy afflicted with an anomaly. But it's important to note that you can only trigger this once per stun. While for her M4, it gives a 40 AP buff and increases the anomaly build-up rate of her charge attacks by 35%. And finally, her M6, which enables all of her attacks to now deal 50% more days, while introducing the vibrato modified mechanic. And as a TLDR, this is just her vibrato and a bloom mechanic, but for outside of stunts. Though unique to vibrato modified is that her EX special and charge attack can now inflict 1 stack, while her ult can inflict 2. But as an important note, the bloom from this only procs the moment an enemy is stunned, not when you get max stacks. And sadly, it does not get affected by her M2. And with her Mindscapes out of the way, let's talk about her possible Wenjins. Nangong Yu's signature gives her 30% anomaly mastery with its main stat, and 90 anomaly proficiency as an equipped bonus on its passive. Aside from this, it also gives a 15% team-wide damage buff after using her basic and special since they deal ether damage. This buff lasts for 40 seconds with a refreshable duration and stacks up to 2 times for a total of a 30% damage buff. And when all stacks are active, she gets an additional 60 AP. Overall, it's a Wenjin that not only buffs her and her team's damage with its passive, but it also allows it to build anomalies faster and get more impact with its AM main stat. Now, it's worth noting that this is the only anomaly mastery stunner Wenjin. However, if it's only impact and her stunning ability you're after, you can compensate for not having this Wenjin with other stunner Wenjins and their passives. So the main drawback for not having her signature is mainly losing out on faster anomaly building for herself, which isn't ideal, and you also lose out on its big damage amping effects for her and her teammates, which will all cause a pretty big damage drop-off. Now with that being said, for budget S-rank alternatives, you have Restrained and Hellfire Gears. With Restrained of course buffing her charge attack combos days and damage, while Hellfire Gears gives tons of impact, but more importantly energy to spam more EX specials that can combo into precise charge attacks. But just note for the AOD team, the ER bonus won't be active a lot of the time due to Nangong Yu's joint attacks with Suna and Arya. Technically, Blazing Laurel can also work, especially for Miyabi teams, but it takes a while for her to stack its ice buff with just her charge attack unless you spam basics with her. And you need parries for its impact buff, so it's up to you if you want to use it. As for A-rank Wenjins, she has 3 possible options. Steam Oven works for more energy and impact, But just note, it sacrifices quite a bit of damage for stunning utility. While the new Simmering Pot also works for good days and a damage buff that's pretty much permanent as long as you trigger assist follow-ups and you can obtain it from an event. And finally, Fossil can provide the biggest days buff and usually would be the best A-rank engine for stunning utility in Deadly Assault. But just like Steam Oven, it sacrifices a lot of her damage for that. But with possible engines out of the way, let's talk about drive discs. For the 4-piece set, the best for her personal damage and general use, especially in the AOD team, is Phaeton's Melody for its AP, AM, and damage buff. Plus, its AM 2-piece set bonus gives quite a bit of impact. Freedom Blues is also extremely good on Disorder teams for faster Ether anomaly building for more disorders, which is important especially for Miyabi teams, or Disorder teams in general. Now, generally, Nangong Yu's Ether Anomaly buildup is good enough in most teams even without this set. But the increased rate of disorders it results in is enough to make it worth it, especially if you don't have her signature or Yuzuha, especially in comps like Miyabi teams. Now, Shockstar Disco can work if you want to maximize her days building and stunning capabilities, but it's only worth it if you can get an extra stun or two. You can't really justify using this set if you can't do that, and in most cases, I highly recommend to just use Phaeton's Melody instead. But speaking of which, for the 4-piece set, Phaeton's Melody is required if you're not using it as the 4-piece. The main reason for this is that it not only enables faster anomaly building, but it also gives more impact than a Shockstar Disco thanks to her passive. However, if you are using it as the 4-piece, I recommend using a set that's focused on improving her damage potential. So any set that gives AP, Ether damage, or attack can work really well. And these generally are the preferred option since you don't really feel the effects of losing out on a stun utility 2-piece, so it's better to focus on her damage. But if you really want to focus more on her days building, Summit is decent for its days buff and is usually preferred over Shockstar since she can already get tons of impact, especially with her signature. But with her possible drive discs out of the way, let's talk about stats. For main stats, you want Anomaly Mastery for slot 6, Ether Penner Attack for slot 5, and finally AP for slot 4. AM will always be better than Impact for slot 6, not only because it enables faster anomaly building, but because it also gives her more impact, with it giving her 37 impact before any buffs, while on Impact slot 6 only gives her 21. As for slot 5, just pick which one has the best substats. Generally, the damage difference between the three isn't too big, so whichever one has the best substats will perform better. Now for substat priority, focus on AP first, then attack percent, and finally flat penner attack, but those two are more optional than anything. Now, cause she pretty much plays the role of both a sub DPS and a stunner, you'll pretty much build her like your typical anomaly DPS, so there is more of a premium for anomaly-related offensive stats. So for stat recommendations, since Nangong Yu gets 120 AP from her core passive, I recommend around 300 to 350 or more AP for really good damage in any type of team. But if you have her signature, you can kinda get away with less. However, AP is really one of two stats you'll mainly invest in, so just get a lot of it. While for attack, around 2,300 to 2,500 or more is pretty good depending on your slot 5 main stat. But again, you can get more than this, but this is more than enough for good damage, especially if you're running her with Suna or Yuzuha. With her stats out of the way, let's talk about possible teammates. Nangong Yu is a stunner and anomaly sub DPS made mainly for hyper carry anomaly teams. Most of her utility being centered around that fact, with her allowing every anomaly unit to be ran in a more hyper carry setup. She enables faster anomaly building while dealing good disorder and a bloom damage on top of making stuns much more beneficial for anomaly units. Plus, she can reliably trigger disorders in just about any team, especially if you have her signature or you have her on Freedom Blues. With that being said, this means that a lot of her utility and personal damage is locked to anomaly teams, and it is not advisable to run her in other team comps. Now, the AOD team is definitely her best team, which isn't really a surprise with how much Hoyo has been advocating for it. But anyway, Nangong Yu enables Arya's stun preferred playstyle, letting her maximize her Abloom's damage with frequent stuns, bonus stun damage multiplier, and stun duration extension. This is also Nangong Yu's most comfortable team since he won't have to worry about quick swapping during stuns to build anomalies or trigger disorders for vibrato building, since you can do all of that while on-fielding Arya due to their joint attacks, lots of Abloom procs, and more. Now the best support for this team is Suna, but the next best is Yuzuha for her anomaly damage buffs. But if you don't have any of them, pretty much any support can work as long as they provide buffs to inactive characters, since Nangong Yu and Arya will mainly be dealing damage at the same time. Now she also works with most on-field anomaly DPSs as well. Nangong Yu enables both fast disorders and stuns for Miyabi, which is great for Fallen Frost stacking and damage dealing, plus she also builds ether anomalies faster due to Frostburn. While Alice with her high assault damage just really appreciates the stuns, and as usual Grandma Piper is our GOAT budget anomaly DPS. The neat thing about Miyabi and Alice is that no matter which support you use, you'll have their additional ability active. While Piper just doesn't care about losing hers when using some supports since they can easily just make up for it with their buffs. Yuzuha for maximizing disorders and her insane buffs, or Suna for extremely high stun damage is the best support for these teams. But any team-wide buffer can pretty much work. Jane also works pretty well, with Nangong Yu enabling her to pretty much have permanent passion state uptime while allowing her assault crits to deal massive damage during stuns. Plus, her assault buff does also buff Nangong Yu's physical Ablooms. So a team with Yuzuha and Nangong Yu is now her best team. But just note, a lot of Nangong Yu teams can't activate Jane's additional ability, so she'll build physical anomalies way slower outside of stuns. Though Yuzuha is more than enough to compensate for this, since she can build physical anomalies for her. However, if you don't have her, just make sure to give Jane all chain attack procs to take advantage of Nangong Yu's buffs in order to maximize assault triggers. Plus, Jane's M1 or signature can somewhat help as well. And you also have the option of running Suna with Freedom Blues if you want Jane to proc more assaults even without Yuzuha. But from experience, in general, the higher numbers Jane hits in these teams is enough to make up for the loss of her additional ability. She also works great with Yanagi, with her disorder buff also buffing Nangong Yu's damage. But sadly, you can't activate her additional ability unless you have an anomaly or electric unit in the team. But thankfully, you can just run Trigger with her signature or Rina to activate it, or simply compensate for it with her own signature or by having Yuzuha build electric anomalies for her. However, Yanagi doesn't really care too much about her additional ability since she can trigger disorders herself, albeit you trigger them a bit less often. Meaning, any support can work as long as they provide team-wide buffs. But from experience, I didn't really notice the lack of Yanagi's additional ability too much, and she was still able to build electric anomalies and trigger natural disorders at a pretty good rate. This is especially the case if you have her signature, give her a Phaeton's Melody 2-piece, and you take advantage of Nangong Yu's anomaly build-up buff for chain attacks. Heck, you can even give her Freedom Blues if you wanted to. Alternatively, you can always just run a duo DPS Yanagi team with Miyabi, Vivian, Bernice, and Alice if you wanted to. And Yanagi's disorder buff alongside the stuns, utility from Nangong Yu, and constant disorder spam is able to make up for the team not having a dedicated support buffer. Grace can work pretty well too, but sadly just like Yanagi, you can't activate her additional ability without an electric or anomaly unit, causing you to lose out on a big shock damage buff. So it's ideally best if you run Rina or Trigger with her signature on this team if you really want it to be active. But supports with big enough buffing utility like Yuzuha, Suna, or Astra can easily compensate for it. However, just as a reminder, unlike Grace's previous team, it's extremely important to always time her ult to stuns due to how important the Abloom, Zap, and Pulse mechanic is for her damage. A quick swap Bernice team can work as well, and from testing, it performs surprisingly well, and it's a very fun and quick swap heavy team that you can try if you like that type of playstyle or just really like Bernice. Of course, Yuzuha is the best support for ensuring burn uptime and huge damage for the team since you won't have Bernice's additional ability active. But you can still keep good burn uptime and trigger lots of disorders due to frequent stuns, Nangong Yu's buffs, and Bernice's inherently high anomaly building abilities, especially her chain attack. So pretty much any team-wide support can work if you don't have Yuzuha, with Suna of course performing pretty good as well. Now sadly, currently every anomaly-centric boss in the CE server is resistant to fire and there is no fire weak content available, so it's kinda hard to test the team accurately. But from the general feel of the team and how it plays, I reckon it will perform pretty well once more fire weak content roll out. And finally, you can also run a Vivian Bloom team. Now this is definitely not her or Nangong Yu's best team, but it does work pretty well and it's another really fun team you can try. However, it's important to state that there is a much more heavy emphasis on Vivian's Blooms in these teams. But thanks to the frequent stuns this team can get, she has no problem maintaining stacks for it. So if you wanted to, you can run an attack slot 6 to maximize her Bloom's damage. Corruption will pretty much have a permanent uptime even if you don't run an AM slot 6 for her in this team, so it's not too detrimental to do so. Now for the support, either Suna or Yuzuha can work, but I recommend Suna since this team with her has a significantly easier time proccing Vivian's Blooms, which is extremely important for this team. But that's about it. Personally, I'm definitely gonna be pulling for her because her teams are fun to play. Plus, I want to complete the most expensive idol animation in the game. Get it? Because it's an idol animation and they're idols. But anyway, make sure to tell me what you think about her in the comments below, and don't forget to hit me with a like and a sub. Now onto the showcases, and as usual, forgive my skill issue, I'm pretty terrible at this game due to my aging motor skills.